I almost forgot to hit the live button, but we did it just in the nick of time. I did want to mention though some housekeeping news. It really does help, like we always say. Even though I don't particularly like to do it, like and subscribe. It does mean a lot. I don't like to come off like a salesman. It kind of goes against my nature because I really do just try to give out transparent, good information. And really, as much as I love just shooting the shit, for lack of a better word, with my friends here on the show, like I hope it matters to you guys as well. So if you could just take the few seconds to like and subscribe, it really does make a big bit of difference. Speaking of difference, I wanted to say, we talk about diversifying your portfolio, playing within a bankroll, and I think we've talked about like the luck variance of like being on the right place and then being able to play it different, but then being like sometimes you're not going to get that right play. Like a couple of weeks ago, we played Mike Evans when we should have played Godwin, but obviously we were on the right game script. This week, I love Tracy, but jamming Tracy in a bunch of cash games wouldn't have made sense. Like jamming Tracy in a bunch of lineups wouldn't have made sense just in case it doesn't work out. But I thought his value was there, and I mentioned before the single game, contest go kind of underutilized. I would say that I think that's the best way to put it. So this is my best result on FanDuel, and in the description I mentioned how we actually had a very profitable day on FanDuel, and then we slightly lost on DraftKings this week. And you have to diversify your portfolio. So I just want to mention that right off the top because I say it all the time, but I don't always show it. This lineup actually was in second place up until the kick got blocked and the defense scored like 20 points on the kick return touchdown. Had they went down, it would have been only like a 3 point difference, and I would have won a lot more. Had it not happened and they go to overtime, you got to imagine that DK Metcalf catches at least one or two passes, maybe. But this is a prime example of you put in a dollar, you win six. Like sometimes the luck isn't going to go my way, but this is a prime example of how you build with the right structure, and then you let the luck, the Sunday night luck or the Sunday day luck rather, play out. Like this this played out in probably my worst favor in terms of making profit, but I still made profit. Like I turned a dollar into six. That's still a very good day. And I think a lot of people can get lost in the weeds of being like, well, I almost took down a tournament. Yeah, but you still more than tripled your profit. So you got to be happy. I think I do that very well. So I just wanted to show that because a lot of times I say diversifying your portfolio, betting the sports book when you see a 7 point edge. I say playing different sports, different fantasy sites, but I don't always show it. So I just wanted to show that off the top. Did you guys have any takeaways for week 5?
Oh, let's see. My biggest take. I only have one. Like, my biggest takeaway is my biggest glaring mistake, which really was more like a portfolio choice. Because I usually just do like a 3 max and a single entry, like what we build here on stream. But this week, it's like my bias hurt me, but it's not like I was a bias against something. I my bias was for situations, which really weren't bad. They just didn't go exactly the way. So, like for example, I love that Arizona San Francisco game. I was stacking Brock Purdy.
Mm-hmm.
I loved that Indy and Jacksonville game. I was stacking Trevor Lawrence. Like those were high scoring games. That's great. That was a great job. Like I loved just like the rest of the field. I had plenty of Jordan Love versus the Rams. That didn't work out as exactly, but
Mm-hmm.
like that was still a 24-point game for the Packers. So like those were all good spots. I didn't like have a bad spot really.
Yeah.
But even though Cincinnati and Baltimore were like the second highest total game, I had very little exposure to that game, which meant I had a horrible weekend because that was the game that you needed with Jamar and Burrow going off the way they did.
Yeah.
I had it in my single interest.
I just, just to tag off what you were saying, I didn't do bad at all. I had not a lot of flames, no snowflakes this week, but I didn't have any great. I didn't have a chase.
That's the
I
thing.
didn't have a burrow. And that's fine. That's going to happen. That's whatever. I don't think that's a process mistake. More so it's just someone you weren't on went off.
I think that's right.
Like I said, like I can look here and it's not like I didn't have Trevor Lawrence. It's not like I wasn't playing these games. I just didn't have the Burrow or the Lamar.
Right.
Like same thing with wide receiver.
I
didn't have the Chase. I didn't have the Higgins. Was I still playing Brian Thomas Jr.? Was I still playing
a Colts receiver?
Yeah, Mike Evans, Wandale. Like, was I still playing decent plays? Yes, but I did not have the highest ceiling game on the slate, and it was right there for me to have.
Mm-hmm.
But for some reason, my bias towards other game environments had me off of that one game.
But I appreciate your honesty of being like, I was on the right game. This is my process. I believe in it. But my bias got carried away, or it got to the point where I might have overlooked something. A lot of people want that transparent. I think Donnie hit it on the head. This was a week where not only did you have to be good, you had to be great. There was a few guys that if you did not have them, you could just close the app. It didn't matter your process or like what you wanted to have happen. It was just one of those weeks where you had to have the greatness. For example, in my single entry, I had a Lamar Jackson, Jamar Chase lineup that barely cashed. Like it min cashed, but it wasn't spectacular because there was so much high leverage positions, and no one really failed. I think that's more important.
Yeah.
There was people that didn't, do what we might have thought, but no one really failed. There was no like really big snowflake.
Well, okay, no, I won't say that. Like there were actually two other like key leverage points to the slate, and one was the chalk tight end hitting in Tucker. Like he was the chalk cash tight end that a lot of people had in their lineups. If they basically, you either had him or you chose one of those pay-ups, or you paid for like Eric All Jr. as a min-price guy. But like that, he was a very high pivot. And a lot of the guys that people paid up for were Bowers and Kittle, who were right there too. So the chalk at tight end sort of hit this week. And on the opposite side of that, every running back technically failed, because none of them really hit the value you want.
Right.
Like other than Tank Bigsby, who like inexplicably got the entire run in the fourth quarter and did exactly what I expected the Jacksonville running game to do in the entire game. He just did it all in the fourth quarter, where it's like Indy sucks, so you're gonna get chances to break off big runs, and that's what Tank did in the fourth quarter. That could have easily have been ETN if he'd have gotten any touches in the fourth quarter. They legit did not give ETN a touch past like 14 minutes.
Right.
Yeah.
But like if you take out Tank, like no one hit more than 20.
Which is weird. I mean,
and the only and like Swift at 5,700, I kind of wanted a little more than 20 from him. So like no one truthfully hit value. Like Kyron at 19.5, Ramondre at 19.5. Don't get me started on that crap. Chuba, like technically Tracy, because he was so cheap, hit value, even though he got you what you would really like. He got you like a floor value game. It's like we just hit value at 4,300.
But if you click on him, I think it will show you who's receiving. He was a converted wide receiver, so I expected a lot more like dump offs, like a lot more like wide receiver kind of. I expected more of a, like a Theo Riddick kind of role for Tracy. That's why I played him. It was the receptions, a PPR website. He's underpriced. I got the opposite. I mean, obviously I'm happy with the result. Like we got like 17 points, but even that didn't happen the way you thought it was. It was just one of those weeks that a lot of stuff happened, but nothing was really predictable. Like Tanks Bigsby being the number one running back.
By far. I mean, it wasn't even close to number 2. I mean,
no, Tank was far ahead of anyone else, and then no one else really hit 20, even with all the expensive tags and players we were all playing, Jacobs, Henry. Like, there's a lot, like Walker. There's a lot
Amir
of guys.
Abdullah was a viable play this week.
Yeah,
I played Alexander Madison, not Amir Abdullah, so yay for me. I also played ETN instead of Bigsby, so yay for me.
but Trey Sermon, who I also played because of the value, he only got there, but he did because of a touchdown. Now maybe you could say, "Oh, that's why you're playing a big kind of tank back, a LeGarrette Blount type for that touchdown." But that was a very lucky touchdown he got.
Yeah, Tank didn't even score a touchdown in a short yardage situation. He broke that. He broke like 3-4 tackles on a long rush for his first touchdown. I didn't see the second touchdown, or vice versa, whatever one. But it was a very weird Tank Bigsby game. I honestly would have never predicted that to happen.
Sometimes I'm glad that stuff like this happens because I'm hoping the field overreacts to next week. Like we always talk about being a forward thinking show, and like I'll go back to play Tony Pollard, this week against the Colts, for example, because I know they give it up to the running back. This proves it. Like so, I can use this data to say I want to play Tony. Donnie, why don't we get over to the spread picks now? Once we got them, so why don't we get that out of the way and then we'll go to the lineup.
All right. I'm sending the screen over to you if you want to get ready to share it. But it was an interesting week for the spreads. I don't want to get too much into this Patriots game, but I'm going to have to for a second. Because this lock of the week, Patriots, of course, brings us to 2-3 now. Patriots lost by 5, but they did have a game-winning touchdown called back on a rule that didn't exist. I didn't know, or at least no one knew that it existed till about 3:30 Eastern. So that's different. I'll live with that. Thank you, Jacoby Brissett, for your service. Drake May's coming in. Gov gets both his picks right with the Ravens and Packers.
Again.
Again. Bringing him to 8-2. Logan 4-5-1 after a loss and a push, and I went 1-1, bring me to 4-5-1 as well. So Gov far and away in the lead so far for the captain pick. Seems to be a trend. But
will I come back down to earth second half of the season? Tune in next time.
But overall, I think we're doing pretty good. We're basically 500 throughout the year so far. If we add it all together, I think we're a little bit more positive because of Gov.
Yeah, if you add in my ROI, we're actually good.
I was going to say, I think we're on track, actually, to be our most profitable.
I don't know how much we want to talk about the Drake May stuff this week, or this early in the week, but I know there's probably 2 more rookies starting this week with Spencer Rattler and Drake coming in.
Yeah. Well, it kind of ties into the Tracy thing. Sometimes there's such a mispraise that no matter who they are, you got to consider playing them. May is only $5,000.
I'd imagine Spencer Rattler's cheaper than that, though.
I'd imagine. I haven't actually looked. Believe it or not, AOC is actually cheaper than May. So, there's some weird DFS stuff going on. Now, I want to play May because of the rushing upside, but we'll save that for the Saturday show. But that's a little sneak peek.
Yeah, while we're talking about this, though, I will say apparently the Devontae Adams talks are really slowing down after the Robert Saleh firing, and then Derek Carr also gets hurt, which is 2 teams that Adams really wanted to go to for.
They were basically the only 2 teams he was saying he would go to.
So, very significant fantasy-wise, what's going to happen there?
Unless he's actually going to the Ravens like he was trolling with.
The Edgar Allan Poe post.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'd imagine he just wants to go somewhere at this point. But
somewhere he can win. He's got his money. Now he wants to go somewhere he can win or somewhere he can play and have fun. Where is he going to win and have fun? Probably Baltimore, because they're not a heavy passing team, so he's not going to be asked to do much other than be great at great times, and we're going to run the ball.
take Mark Andrews' third down role.
Which you can blame him. And that's really what we try to do on DFS. We try to have fun and make money. So, like, I'm not. What was weird, though, is he walked it back today. He was like, I never asked for a trade. And I guess that's easy to say, like, when you know that the trade might not be imminent or it's not available to you anymore. But it's just strange how quickly the news fluctuates. But I would say, like, from a DFS standpoint, you got to react to that. Is Tank, like, for example, again, is Tank Bigsby's score real, or is that just the Colts being, a terrible run defense? And it could be a bit of both, but you have to, as a DFS player, interpret that for your own process.
Yeah,
like
and
I said, I kind of let out of the bag. I'm playing Tony Pollard this week.
We didn't say the team name either, but a team like Pittsburgh could easily just come out of nowhere and emerge now because there's not, it's really Baltimore and Pittsburgh look like the only two teams that have a chance of winning anything or making the playoffs. If Carr's out for a long time,
and could use a wide receiver to boost that.
Right.
Like Kansas City's that same way, but like
very unlikely.
Yeah. Vegas probably isn't trading him in division.
Unless you get a haul.
Like, if anything, there is still the whole, like, if you wanted to fucking piss off Brandon Ayuk, you trade him for Adams, like, almost straight up, since they both have pretty big contracts. It's be like, okay, we gave you the money and you still want to be a bitch, go be a Raider.
Yeah.
And then Devontae Adams gets to be on a Super Bowl caliber team in San Francisco. Just think if you had Adams instead of Ayuk with Deebo and Kittle. That could be very spicy.
So I did want to pull this up just before we get to our show lineups to say this is an example of how I got Jamar Chase, Lamar Jackson right, and still just barely min cash. I mentioned it for my single entry. I also played Chase, I think, with a Trevor Lawrence stack, and that had Thomas as well, and I only made like $250. So DFS is a hard game, because you can see, like, I got some stuff right, and that's why I cashed, but I had a lot of snowflakes. I made some very bad errors.
7% owned, 11% owned Jamar Chase. Not having, like, it's weird how, like, only 11% of the field had him. How can it be hurt? Well, now the 11% of the field that had him all have a shot at being in the top 11%.
Yeah.
11% is a huge amount and a lot of that is paired with the 7% of Lamar.
Well, not only that, but you have
the Burrow,
I
have to see what his ownership was.
Sure,
but I know that it was actually much lower than I was expecting. Or no, it was actually sort of where I thought it was.
6.
Which is why, it was 6. So, like, that's sort of where I thought it was going to be. I just, somehow I didn't get to that in my single entries. It's like, it's the one thing that's irking me this week. It's like, it was staring me in the face to play that game. And then it didn't make one of my tighter builds.
Yeah, and I mean, his running backs, if you look at that, 16 points each. How many weeks does that come in and give you, second place in a contest? These
on the week where I was about to say, on the week where no running back basically got you 20, as long as you didn't have a bunch of duds value-wise and you hit on the other nuts around it, you were good. But yeah, you kind of needed a Burrow Chase Higgins.
Yeah. So
and then he hit the chalky tight end too. Like, Slayton is this guy that really put him up at the top. Like, he got the right game environment, he hit the right chalk that went off, and then Slayton at 4% gave him a top percentage lineup.
Yeah.
Did you guys see the Josh Allen thing? Are we going to want to talk about that at all? Because that was a weird situation.
Are you talking about the Josh Allen, the coach's decision rather to throw the ball?
No. The fact that he hit his head on the ground, looked to go unconscious, and then they never took him out the game.
Yeah, that's just negligence.
Yeah.
I
So-
never even saw it be that bad. Like, I remember watching that game and hearing about a play where it's like, oh, he got hit real hard, and then went on
His
the
head
sideline,
slammed into the ground.
like he was going to go into the protocol, but then immediately came back out with his helmet before the next play.
And then probably had his worst game as a professional, finishing 9 of 30 passing.
Yeah, it was a bad look. I'll just say the NFL should be ashamed for that, truly.
Especially after we just go through this Tua stuff, and you fix the concussion rules. But
Yeah. Well, they literally papered over what am I trying to say here?
Construction? What?
Huh.
Contact?
I'm trying here. I guess I have a concussion. That's what I was trying to say. I don't know why that word wasn't coming to me. It was a good 3-second delay there. I don't know what.
Too many concussions, Logan. Too many concussions.
Maybe I have a migraine, but I don't think I was hit as hard as Josh Allen. But the NFL did paper over it. I think it was just they wanted to say it because of the Tua stuff. So if we're being honest, they wanted to say concussions. They wanted to say like we're doing something. But you saw when a coach had a chance to get his player right back on the field, he did it. So that competitive kind of flavor is still overpowering the ingredients of player safety.
well, it's just interesting because we know upstairs they can easily tell you to take a timeout and rip a player out of the game. And they do it all the time, but it just feels like, oh, it's Josh Allen, so we're not going to do it.
I was about to say they don't do it for Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes. They make sure that those guys can play. That's all I got to say about that.
Sometimes there's a double standard. We got to acknowledge it as an unfair. It's not bad of you to bring up, Donnie, but it really is just unfair sometimes. Speaking of unfair, though, I thought this lineup was fairly constructed. I thought we constructed a very good lineup. Obviously, we probably picked the wrong 5K quarterback, and it's not because we wanted to play Watson, because personally I think we have our own biases there. But I like a rushing quarterback at around 5K, though. He just looks done. You know, maybe you were hoping there was a chance playing I think it was more the up-pace nature of the Commanders, and just hoping that game script would carry the cheaper Watson. It just did not happen. It wasn't a bad play, though, because the Commanders have literally upticked every team they have played so far this season.
Yeah, and then the Commanders' defense is so awful. That shows you how bad Cleveland really is. They couldn't score on the Commanders at all. They 125 yards passing. I mean, I think Jacoby Brissett could do better than that. And he's had, what? I think this is his 6th fumble this year already for Watson. That's too much.
See, that's what I'm going to have to delve into, because, like, I'm pretty sure the metrics are still going to show that Washington's defense is kind of ass. But also, like, the last couple weeks, they've done quite well. So, like, are they a bad defense, actually? Or did they just, like, get kind of fucked up by Tampa?
It's true. Like I say in the description, I talked about trends and like realizing what we thought going into the season versus what is reality. Like basically the expectation versus what is reality. I think at this point we got to admit that the Commanders are at least a fun team for fantasy. I think I'm going to play a piece of the Commanders games every time they're on the slate until they disappoint me, and I don't expect that disappointment anytime soon. I'll say it that way.
Yeah, Jaden Daniels still the number 2 fantasy quarterback this year. That's pretty solid, and there's no signs of it slowing down. He is just constant efficiency. He's not making bad decisions. He's just leading that offense downfield perfectly.
He is very expensive this week, but I thought that Terry McLaurin was too cheap. So that's a prime example of like you don't always have to pay up for the primary option that might be overpriced or they priced him right, because that's what I was saying about Daniels. They actually priced him right.
The crazy thing about Daniels, like fantasy wise, is how he's like doing it solo, but not like with so much rushing that it makes sense. Like for the amount of fantasy points he's putting up, you would think he'd be bringing a receiver along with him. But McLaurin hasn't had a 20-point game yet this year. Like he's not really bringing a receiver along with him. He's just sort of consistently putting up 20-plus point fantasy games at quarterback.
And a guy like,
and then he's not like having, and then he doesn't also have like 100-yard rushing, 2 rushing touchdown games. He's had like 1 game like that, but it's crazy how efficient he's doing and just putting up points while not really bringing anyone else along.
He has some random receivers too. Like Zacchaeus is having consistently decent work.
Brown, Noah Brown.
You could say no if you told me Noah Brown's having a career year and Terry McLaurin's doing, just being Terry McLaurin, I would expect it. It's not even that. It's literally everyone's involved. He's spreading the ball up so well. He understanding defenses this early, he is primed to be a great quarterback for a long time.
Well, it's a lot of quick passes. It's a lot of first reads. It's a lot of give and go or I'm going to run kind of offense. So I'm not so sure it's him reading defenses as well as Cliff Kingsbury had all that time working with Kyler Murray to figure out how to just be an offensive coordinator and make Jaden Daniels the best he can be. Like, I feel like the efficiency of Jaden Daniels, he is playing as good as I think he'll ever play in his career in his rookie year, which is crazy.
That's what happened with Cam, pretty much.
Yeah, sort of. Cam came out the gate really good. He got a little better the first 3 years, but like after year 3, Cam was basically himself for the next 5 years, barring injury.
That was honestly Robert Griffin III, that wasn't it? Like
Robert Griffin had
Robert Griffin. That's the thing. Had Robert Griffin not got injured at the end of his first year, maybe. Like that's the kind of thing we're looking at. But like even Robert Griffin III, he was winning games in a specific way. He was a heavy rusher. He was breaking off big runs and all of that.
Yeah.
Daniels isn't doing that. He's just being super efficient.
I'm glad you mentioned that, though, because I'll just say one last forward-thinking thing for next week. I do think there's some regression coming for Terry McLaurin. He is still seeing, I want to say he's averaging 10 to 11 targets per week. I just think eventually, to your point, you're right. He hasn't brought a receiver with him. He hasn't really ran like a crazy circus game where you're like, wow, he's really lit the league. I just think that eventually that's coming. And maybe I can't afford Daniels this week in a lot of my builds because I just find value elsewhere. But I will have some McLaurin. I will have pieces of this offense. Speaking of pieces, though, I thought we pieced together this lineup very well. Again, I'm really proud of this lineup. Even though it didn't cash, I don't really mind that too much because, like I said off the top, it's not always about what could have happened. It's about what did happen. But I think you could take a lot from this lineup and apply it next week in terms of what we consider, what we don't consider. Like, for example, our worst play here, Deebo Samuel, I think was just a unlucky kind of variance. Like, it just so happened to be that
San Fran always usually has one guy that does pretty well. It was a Kittle week this week for that dude. And actually it was more of an Ayuk week because Ayuk had 25. It wasn't Deebo. It wasn't Mason. So, like, that'll happen. Like, San Fran still sort of had the game script and put up points. It just didn't go through Deebo. Had they gotten to 30 and gotten another touchdown, maybe that would have been a Deebo touchdown. Maybe that would have been a Mason touchdown, and those guys wouldn't have failed as much as they did. Maybe Ayuk would have just broken the slate like Chase did. We're not sure.
Yeah, and I mean, early on, we pretty much would, you see Brian Thomas have a 30-point game almost. I was feeling really good going into the afternoon, even though Cleveland stuff didn't work out, but I still had some Washington. And then that Baltimore-Cincinnati game goes off, and everything's ruined.
The one saving grace, I'm like, we don't have a lot of PMR, but at least we have some Washington Commanders. Like, they're going to put up some points. And then really it was, Watson again, just not looking efficient. Like, maybe we should have expected that because we did, he was a price play. You can't say like, oh, I wanted 30 points from Watson when he's 5K, and Lamar Jackson's what, like 7,000. Like, there is a reason that Lamar Jackson's priced that way, and that 30-point game shows it. Joe Burrow was in the top 10 as well.
I mean, no excuse for Watson. Obviously, he's not been good since he's been in Cleveland. Right now, that tackle position's really ugly. They have none of their actual tackles in. Their offensive line's super banged up. But you just can't be better, or can't be this bad. That offense is full of guys who are just consistent. And they probably have the most inconsistent quarterback in the league.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have no disagreement with that. Like, I don't even have an argument for it. It's like, yeah.
That's what I kind of mean about playing Watson. It's like, when he is 5,300, could he went out and got 20 points? Could he have had that Joe Flacco game? It's like, yes, he could have, but there's a reason he's that price. And like, I bake in that 53 salary bakes in the potential that I get the game that I got. Even the low efficiency game, like, this proves it. He did not get a snowflake with 9 points. Like, DraftKings is basically admitting, like, this wasn't your worst play. So if Debo goes out and scores just his median, which is like 12 or 15 points, there's probably min catches. And some weeks are going to be the big explosion games. You're going to get wide receivers that go for 40 or 30, which is still tremendous, especially considering Thomas was a lot cheaper than Jamar Chase. So these are the weeks where I consider them almost survival weeks. Where you basically either you got the nuts and you're the squirrel, climbing the tree happy as can be, or you're just trying to stash it away for the next week. So really what I'm trying to do now is be happy that I made as much profit as I did, and then decide to take that information for next week. Basically a collection of information a week for me to say what I got right, what I got wrong, what really did I do wrong that I just don't want to repeat.
Yeah, I feel like you really have 2 or 3 weeks a year where this happens, where it's just a couple games blow up, and then if you don't get the near 40-point guys that happen to have their week, and you just have everyone else be consistent or consistently good or bad, it's whatever. The running backs were all bad, outside of the few exceptions. Whatever. It happens. It will happen one more time, I'm sure, where the running backs don't score and whatever.
But transparently, this is not a week where I'd say, like, oh, I wanted to play Tank Bigsby. I know some people will do that. Please, if you can take anything from my review show, like, we always try to be a bit different with our review, a bit more of an alternative, think forward. This isn't... Maybe I'm wrong, but I would have to see it more. And maybe it is part of your process to bet on the rookies, but I think that's more of a best ball strategy. I do not think that, like, you should beat yourself up for not playing Tank Bigsby. Now, if you did, because you want to get contrarian, you should also celebrate it. But that doesn't mean that you should be mad at yourself for not playing it.
Year 2 Bigsby, last year he got almost no workload at all, it felt like.
Mm-hmm.
All this tells me is if ETN goes down, he is a viable option, which is good to know. Because they already have him priced at $6K, right?
I believe so, yeah.
If there was a world where ETN's at, he goes up to like 64, probably 65. And at least I know that he's a play that you could do.
Well, with the bye weeks too, you're going to have to get a bit more creative with the way you build lineups. Like, there is a portion of that. I wanted to show this lineup because it was our lowest scoring lineup, but actually it had the least amount of snowflakes. It did not flame.
This is how most of my week went. It was consistently good, no great. But
And it was one of those weeks, Donnie. You needed that cherry bomb. You needed that explosion from someone.
Yeah.
I got it from Chase, and I was able to take a 2 from Bo Melton and still, cash. Maybe that was a worse lineup than this, but guess what? This lineup only scored 125 points. So as much as I can say, well, this made more football sense. These are better football players. No one's that stuff doesn't help.
I know we don't talk much about season long, but in my personal fantasy lineup, I needed Kamara last night to have 25 points, and I thought I was in good shape. No. What did he end up scoring? 12? Maybe 12? So, I just, really weird week, I think.
There was definitely some shiftiness on Sunday morning. I've been noticing that a lot this year. Like some of the main chalk stays, like everyone was on Jane Reed and the Green Bay guys, so him coming in 37. Like Henry was projected to be high owned this week against Cincinnati. And I had Henry, but I didn't leverage off of Henry by playing either of the passing games, which that is a mistake on me. Like as good as that game looked, to not have enough of it in my portfolio.
Yeah.
Like it's fine that I didn't stack it, but then I also had no Chase or Higgins where I could have had some of them somewhere.
True.
I do have
the ownership percentages were a little off in certain places, I think.
Go ahead, Donnie. Then we'll get to the question here.
Yeah. So with Derrick Henry, we know that he's obviously going to get a lot of work. Mm-hmm. But in those games where we expect it to be high scoring, is it almost better to just say, hey, let's not play Henry, and if we want to play Baltimore, just go with a guy like Hill who's going to be much cheaper, but he's going to get like 6 targets because they're going to have to convert third downs, and he's going to be much cheaper. I just the Baltimore offense running game, they sub Hill in so much, and every time he's on the field, he gets the ball, it feels like. Lamar loves to check it down to him.
Yeah, but on the opposite end, you could say they love to give Henry a touchdown, and he has the highest touchdown outcome of anyone on the slate when the slate starts, I would say. Like if anyone, you talk about like touchdown props and like who you would bet to score a touchdown, Derrick Henry would be one of the prime options. So that is kind of baked into his price as well. You are right. I think that's what makes Lamar Jackson stacks under-owned. And then people are always wondering, I think it's easy to say, well, I'm just going to play Lamar Jackson naked and hope he rushes, because people don't want to play that kind of what if game or that Russian roulette kind of style where it's like, I don't know who it's going to be. What I would say, though, is you got to build your Raven stack for what you want to have happen. Like, if you want to build more of a cash, like, I just want 15 points from a Raven bringback, then Henry is probably your guy. Now, if you want that big explosion game at low ownership, which we're going to talk about ownership here in a minute because it was a question in our chat, that's where you would go with more of a Bateman, or maybe even I went with a Mark Andrews as a pivot off of Kraft trying to get up in a FanDuel lineup, for example.
3 tight end touchdowns for the Ravens this week.
Yep.
None to Andrews, was it? I think it was none to Andrews.
None to Andrews, but he fell at the 1.
Oh, man, is dust. I've already told you this.
Yeah, but he got 9.
I saw what was that third tight end's name? Collier.
Yes.
I saw him catch a ball. I just saw a big white guy with an 8 on his jersey. I was like, "Hey, Andrews is finally making plays." It wasn't Andrew.
Well, I'll tell you this. You guys probably know this. I'm a Lions fan, and Brock Wright and Sam Laporta always confuse me because they both wear high 80s numbers. And when you have Sam Laporta, and it ends up being Brock Wright, it is so deflating. I'll just say that.
I feel like that's going to get me one time. And the Ravens they're another offense that it's like, really seems like it's based on just efficiency. Just make sure you're getting the ball forward somehow, some way. And that's really not great fantasy-wise.
Are you ready for me to gush over you a bit, Gov? I think Gov is one of the best game theory guys I know. Like he has a very unique kind of way of like seeing things or forecasting things based on how to build it. So I don't know if I'm right about the Ravens thing, but I think you would be better to answer that question. But I truly believe that you have to build your Lamar Jackson stacks for what you hope to have happen. Like if you're playing a wide receiver, you're playing more the upside chance, or you're just playing him naked. But I feel like however you build it, you got to know what you want. Like Henry is more of a consistent option, but to Donnie's point, you're not going to get a whole lot of receiving.
It's not even that. If you think the Ravens are going to win, just play Henry. But if you think it's a close game and the Ravens are going to be losing, Hill now becomes, I think, the most viable running back option.
Is that your process?
I don't know if I'd play it,
Yeah.
but if it was a showdown, I think I just fade Henry at this point and go Hill and hope that it's a close game or they're forced to pass it a lot.
Offense runs through the big dog. Like
I would say
the optimal stack for Lamar would be to just do Lamar Henry. You're probably going to get
that's so expensive.
Offense. Yes, it is, which is why so is Burrow Chase. Like there's a lot of expensive stacks.
Yes.
And
I had it.
Lamar and Henry one doesn't really correlate, so like it's hard to do.
Yeah,
I agree. I would probably just play Henry because like playing Lamar with Henry doesn't have much correlation, and Lamar very rarely goes off through the passing game, and when he does, it's usually one of the random tight ends. It's not like Bateman and Flowers all the time.
Which I'm really impressed with how Bateman's progressing this year. I think he looks so much better this year and more comfortable in the offense.
He does look better. The question is, to Go's point, will we ever get consistency? And I think like that's kind of where you have to realize you're playing a week-to-week game, and sometimes the inconsistency is baked in. You guys will have to help me with this question here because I am such a contrarian by nature. You guys know this, building shows with me, talking with me throughout the week. I find the 1% plays. I build very stars and scrubs lineups. I mean, I was playing Tracy so I could play Lamar Jackson and Henry in a lineup. Talk about smooth transitions. So this guy was basically asking if he thought ownership was off. The only time I talk about ownership is on our Saturday show when you guys bring it up. Because I've never had to worry about ownership too much because I always have a contrarian play here or there that just makes my lineup so different that like I don't really worry about ownership too much.
I don't worry about ownership either usually because for me it's just like if I think I'm playing something and I think it's going to go off, I'm probably just playing it anyway. Because if I tell myself that story and then it comes in chalky, it's like, well, maybe people just agreed with how I felt anyway.
Right.
That validates how I felt.
Maybe it was a good process play. If everyone's on it for a good reason. Gov, does this make sense to you? Like when he says the ownership is off, what do you think he meant? Like, is he just surprised by the ownership? Is he like more disappointed that that we're getting so smart DFS players? Like, do you think the DFS community is just getting smarter? Like, truly, I'm just so in the weeds with my own process that like I never have to worry about what everyone else is doing.
Well, like, I mean, I worry about ownership, sort of. Like, I'm going to look at it. I'm going to see where it's condensing and see if there's like a leverage spot. And like, I haven't been hitting on that this year as much as I should have. So like, that's sort of like something I've been like this week specifically is like a time where I was going to go back and review some stuff for the first couple weeks, see if I'm doing right. Because like, I seem to have good thoughts. My picks are going well, as you can see with our spreads. So it's not like my thoughts, like you said, it's not like my thoughts aren't somewhat coming up with the correct scripts on things, but I'm just not able to put it together myself. And I got to figure out what sort of biases I have that are causing that to happen right now. But I've been noticing the first few weeks that like ownership hasn't been perfect. Like there's definitely been some swings in ownership. Couple weeks ago, like Rashee Rice was really chalky, even though everyone wanted to play the Arizona game and the Seattle game, but everyone was saying that Rice was going to be chalky, and then no, it was like DK and or Marvin Harrison that were the chalky ones. So like, there's definitely been some offs, but like when it comes to 1% guys, like anyone sub 5%, those are usually correct, unless all of a sudden some big news happens that steams a guy, like the day of on Sunday morning. Then sometimes you get that sub 5% guy who's now all of a sudden 10% or more. But usually, like if you got 1% plays, like they are 1% plays, and like they're usually 1% plays for a reason. But you do have to like you do, Logan. Like if you're gonna play contrarian, like you don't have to worry about ownership as much. Just find your contrarian plays, and then you can build out the lineups the way you believe you can get them. You don't have to worry about ownership so much.
But to your point, like when I say I don't worry about it, I know it. Like I'm aware of it. I just don't factor it. I should say it differently, because I don't factor it into my decisions as much. Like I feel like that's my superpower. Like I'm not saying I do a lot, right? But one of the things I do is I block out a lot of noise when it comes to you have to play this. You know, like for example, I thought about playing Ken Walker this week. I like Ken Walker, Michigan State guy. I knew he's a workhorse. I knew that in college. I know that in the pros. But I didn't play it because, one, I like Derrick Henry more. I like that game script more. And then two, I'm like, you know, the game, if I'm going to get different, the running back I actually think has a better chance is Mason. And I didn't want to play the game with guessing which 49ers wide receiver it was going to be. I didn't want to put, like, I might have actually played Walker, honestly, if Kittle was rolled out, because then it would have been more condensed for the wide receivers maybe to pick up more ownership, speaking of which. But once I'm like, Mason's going to be in there, Kittle obviously helps the run game. Let's just play Mason. I think this is the better leverage spot.
And not to mention you were playing a lot of Tracy, so that kind of negates Walker playing.
Right, because you don't normally want to play, you know, two running backs in the same game.
Although it was one of those plays that could have worked this last week but again, all of running back underperformed this week.
Right? Yeah. Honestly, I'm not looking at this week really too much as like an actual review of saying, what can I change in my process? Because this is just a week where it's not, I don't think it's as much about process failing and more so about other people exceeding in a way. I don't know if that's the exact way to word it, but
there was large outcomes this week. And so it was a very boom or bust week. And I've been a veteran of DFS long enough to know that those weeks happen, right? There are weeks, for example, in this lineup where the average lineup that has no snowflakes would have been cashed. Guess what? This is not that week. Maybe in a couple weeks, it is that week, you know, but this isn't the week. And so the best thing you can do is not avalanche your bankroll. Like, that's why we always say you have to play within your bankroll, because once you submit your lineup, it's gone. That's a ticket. You're hoping your outcome comes, but you have to plan just like you would a weather condition for those conditions not to go as you plan. Like, for example, on Sunday night, I did not plan to stay up an hour and a half waiting for the Steelers game to start. Now, I did because I'm a degenerate and I had some bets on Najee Harris is over, but I mean, that in itself is kind of an example of how the NFL can be fun to watch, but also tiring and exhausting.
Did you guys watch start to finish that Sunday? I caught up with the second half of the morning game, and then I watched the rest of the day.
Luckily, I work remote, so at least I don't have the commute. I don't have the get up and grind before you go to work kind of thing. So it did make it a bit easier for me.
I mean, I don't watch those London games kick off at 8:30 for me. I'm just not I'm not waking up at 8:30 on a Sunday to watch Jacksonville usually get curb stomped by somebody.
You would hate the West Coast. Football games start at 10 a.m.
Yeah, see, it's not happening.
Donnie, I tried, man. But shout out to YouTube TV as we kind of have fun and we wrap up, with some humor. I tried to wake up for that London game, but I'm like, you know what? You got YouTube TV. It will record for you. They have an automatic DVD built in. Like as long as you hit record, you'll be able to fast forward the commercials. You got an extra 20 minutes of sleep. You'll be caught up lickety split. So that's what I did. And even still, it was a hard wake up, but I did it. I did win though. To be fair, I did do a showdown and I won.
I did not get a showdown in for that one. I'm with Donnie though. Like I did wake up for it.
I couldn't. Does that mean the London games kick off at 6:30 in the morning in the West Coast?
Yeah,
that's insane. I could not imagine waking up at 6:30 in the morning to watch a football game.
No.
Well, how about waking up at 5:30 to build lineups for it?
Even worse.
Because that's the thing. You immediately went there, Gov, and I actually want to mention that because that's what DFS players really do. If you wake up at 1:00, I don't think you play DFS efficiently on a Sunday morning. I'll be frank and say that. We keep it transparent. You have to keep track of late breaking news. A couple of weeks ago, it ended up being nothing, but Tyreek Hill was literally put in handcuffs, 20 minutes before the game. So if you're not ready to react to that, that's a big salary allocation and big ramifications. You have to be able to adjust. Now, luckily, I love the NBA, so I'm kind of built for that. I've already kind of been conditioned for that.
NBA, I'm actually going to play a lot of this year now that I don't work nights. So I don't know.
See, and I do work nights, so I'm still trying to figure out how I'm going to play my NBA season this year.
Probably not.
I will not be around at lock most nights.
I don't know.
That makes it so hard.
Yeah, I know. It's very, very tough to
I just don't
try to have a dummy lineup built at 4:00. Yeah, no, it might not be. It really might not be. I have to watch that.
That's where I got to personally when I was working during lock. It wasn't worth it, and I had dead time to fix and check, and it still didn't work.
Yeah, I would think I would have dead time too. I'm not sure.
That one customer comes in. I
might be trying to save up and do some best ball for NBA just so I have a little sweat going.
Yep. Well, that's a good promotion. We are trying to work it out. No promises, but we are trying to work out a best ball team on Underdog. I took advantage of the deposit match. We have some money over there now. We're trying to make it work. We're not going to promise it because if we're going to do it, we got to make sure all of us get together. We got to give you the rankings like we normally do, at least some idea of what we're thinking. We don't want to just go in blind. It's been a long time since I played any kind of actual season-long fantasy. But that's in the works potentially. We do want to do more NBA content, though. I know the NBA is trying. They're also trying to get a red zone going. I know they tried it last year. They did a beta test for it.
I know hockey's going to have their own version of red zone this year.
How would that work? Okay, they don't.
What the fuck are you asking me for?
Oh, dude, the puck is so hard to see as it is. Can you imagine the quad box for the puck?
Oh God, the puck box.
Yeah, I guess maybe you just put a camera on the puck. Truly, I don't know. But before we get icing, I'm gonna get out of here. Before I start acting like I'm a NHL pundit for some reason.
I know Gov probably has MLB to watch with the Dodgers in San Diego playing a high scoring game.
There's a baseball game on?
Yeah, Dodgers are down 6-5 right now.
This is a good time to watch baseball, but baseball is just too long.
Yeah, it's playoff baseball. These are the good games. Yeah.
Right. That's the problem with baseball.
The Padres!
A World Series last year won me my record on a week of 20-something. So
process over plays, John.
It was not process. It was
Teoscar just hit a freaking grand slam to put him back in the game, too.
Yeah.
It's only the third. Never mind. Back in the game. It's still kind of early. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good game.
Go Teoscar. Yeah.
Shout out to the CBS Seeing the Jihad, by the way, for coming into the show again. He can't. He's a big timer. He doesn't got to give local podcasts like us a chance. he's actually doing me a favor. He's willing to do some promotion for me, liking and hitting the subscribe button. So here, I don't like to do it, so maybe my friends will do it for me. But hit the like and subscribe on the way out. Good night, guys. We appreciate it greatly. Saturday is my favorite show. I'll be honest, these Tuesday shows are fun because we get to talk about a smorgasbord of review processes, but I love Saturday. So join us Saturday afternoon, and I'll try not to say goodnight on Saturday afternoon. That's always a give and take, but we'll see if I actually get it right this week. Good night, guys.
Have a good night.
Peace out, everyone.